What's going on, Infected? Welcome to the quarantine. This is Kickstart Your Week. So if you're not familiar with what this is my usually a weekly show where I cover the past week's games that had came out on Kickstarter, and I just basically talk about why the ones that I thought were neat. And with so many Kickstarters out on the market and so little time, I narrow it down to the maximum 5 that I like the most. Now, I mentioned that this is usually a weekly show. I've been on spring break from school in college, and on top of that, I've also been dealing with a really bad sinus infection. So literally my entire spring break, I've just felt like crap and haven't been able to breathe. I'm still kind of dealing with a little bit of the allergies that I usually get this time of year as well. But that's the reason for not having a Kickstart Your Week last week. So if you're one of those people wondering why that wasn't out, that's the reason why. But this week I'm covering everything that would have covered and this week. And on top of that, if you do like this type of show, you do like what I do here, if you could support me on Patreon up here, because YouTube is a bowl of dicks and took away all my monetization, which wasn't much to begin with, but any amount of support for the show would definitely be appreciated. And secondly, check out the Gamerati if you like this kind of style of format where I talk about Kickstarter games. And the reason why is they also usually do a weekly podcast that I'm also a part of, that I help out with. And it's similar to this, but in the sense of we all choose one Kickstarter and we talk about why we like that one Kickstarter. And that's pretty much it. Alright, first up is going to be Misty, I think is how it's supposed to be pronounced. This one claims to be an area-controlled deck-building hand management game, essentially. Now, first and foremost, the game has some really cool-looking minis to it, which is the big thing that really intrigued me. But then the area control aspect I also thought was really, really cool, because you have, it looks like 5 zones or like areas that are around the map, and when I move on to one, I can then move it pretty much wherever I want and shift everything else around. So I thought that brought like a really interesting mechanic to the game, because now I move into this tile and I take control of it or whatever, and then now maybe I move up here and I split your forces, or I put you in a really crappy situation because now you're maybe next to a bunch of big monsters or bad guys. And I thought that looked like a really cool concept. And then the deck building aspect seems more like a hand building aspect, actually. Is you have these cards that go into your hand, and you play these cards for multiple purposes, similar to something like Twilight Struggle right here, where this card can be used for a variety of different things. But throughout the course of the game, you're going to be able to add more cards to your hand or deck or whatever you want to call it. It's more of a hand, but then you're going to be using those for whatever they're supposed to be used for your different actions, and that's kind of what drives the game forward. Alright, next up is Australia. Now, Australia is an interesting looking game. Now, first and foremost, I'm not a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. I know a little bit of the mythos, kind of what I've gotten from like the Call of Cthulhu video games and some of the board games, the Lovecraftian board games that I own. But that's about the extent of my knowledge. I find the written work, the books and stuff, incredibly dry, incredibly racist, and just not very... They're very painful for me to read. But the mythos, I do like the mythos. So Australia looks interesting. It starts off kind of like a resource management kind of game, where it's a Euro, you're just trying to build train tracks to be able to then allow you to get to the resources that you need a lot more efficiently. And to do this, you're going to be using one of my favorite mechanics in a system, is where... kind of like Tokaido and Horus Heresy that you actually don't see up here, where I can take this action and it maybe costs me 1 action point. Or I can take this one action that costs me, say, 4. It jumps me up 4 spots on this board, and then whoever's furthest behind gets to continue taking actions until they're in front of the player. So it kind of rewards you for like slow and steady wins the race kind of thing, or you can do the one big action that you need, even though it's going to be a while until you get to do something. And that's one of my favorite systems. I love that system. It's quick, easy to understand, and straight to the point, and it gives you a lot to think about. But Australia does that. But after a certain point, the old ones wake up. So now you guys have old gods that you have to fight. And so these resources that you've been collecting for points or whatever, you now are having to hurry up and spend on, which of course you could do before this, but you're going to be now having a standing military and trying to have to fight these things. And then it comes with this interesting mechanic of like kind of begrudgingly working together, because if you don't take care of these old ones, they're just going to start wrecking everything. So you wind up kind of begrudgingly work together. I'm going to tell you what, you could do 3 points of damage to him. You'll get 3 points for those 3 points damage, and then I'll do the remaining 4 points or whatever, and kind of split it up. Or the guy, the other opponent go, no, I want to do 4. And if you don't want it, then he could just start jacking your stuff up. And I love that mechanic. I like when games do stuff like that. The game just looks incredibly just crazy and weird and fun. Next up on the list is Cult. This is a cryptozoic game, so you know it's going to be maybe good. So I have a couple of their games and I thoroughly enjoy them, but I've also played a few of their other games and they're not so good. So you kind of have that going, but it is cryptozoic. Now, the way Cult works is you each have your own god, and of course there's Cthulhu in there, because ever since it went it lost its royalty. Everybody and their mother uses Cthulhu and Lovecraft stuff. But either way, you all have your own gods. Of course, you're gonna have like the lusty like demon girl and Cthulhu and all these different monsters, and your goal is to spread the word of your god or goddess, to try to get everybody into your cult so it appeases your demon lord or whatever it is, and you take over the world with sweet, sweet succubi love. The game boasts multiple different ways to win, lots of replayability, I guess, where everything kind of can be different at the time. Different gods that you're trying to bring into the world are all different in some way. But overall, I like games where I get to be the bad guy. I'm not trying to save the world. I'm trying to watch it burn. And I like games like that because it kind of breaks the standard mold. Next up is Into the Black. Now, Into the Black, I'm wanting to say I've covered on this show before. But it's back onto Kickstarter, so I'm assuming it probably didn't get funded. But where Into the Black really looks interesting to me is, it's a sci-fi themed game, so I mean, you already got points in my park for that. But the way it works is, I like games like, I think Dead of Winter does this, where you have your main objective, but then everybody else has their own objective as well. So everybody else is doing some shady stuff. And you're trying to figure out, okay, are they just doing some shady stuff because their card says they have to, but they're actually legit? Or are they just a piece of crap? And you got to kind of try to narrow that down. But then on top of that, the overall theme of the game is you're like space pirates. So you're like hostiles invading this ship, which kind of goes back to the previous game I mentioned. Sometimes I like to just be the bad guy. And so, I don't know about you, some of us, I used to, dream about being a space pirate, and I'm usually a space pirate in games. We play Zaya, I'm usually a space pirate. Some people grow out of it. Some people don't. But the overall theme of this game fascinates me. I love the overall theme of the game. You're trying to slowly explore the ship while fending off these invaders, so you can get whatever the overall objective is. Warp core or power cells or whatever. You're trying to get in, get that, get out. But then maybe again, my job is to blow Steve out of the airlock and kind of try to make it look like an accident so I don't get blown out of the airlock. And overall, on top of everything, I love the theme, and I'm a big Hidden Traitor fan, so the game's hitting a lot of the right notes there. Alright, and the last game on this actually shouldn't require any introduction, any announcement, so yeah, I mean, I guess it would help. Lastly is Batman. Batman, from what I understand, it's It seems like it's almost the exact same game as the Conan game, just probably refine. It seems like, you know, they refined some rules and some of the systems mechanics of the game, but for the most part, it looks like it's Conan reskinned and refined and improved to be Batman. Now, Batman, it seems to cover the comic book Batman. I never got real into DC or Marvel for that matter. So I'm not huge into Batman. Batman is probably my favorite superhero because he's just a jerk with money, and he doesn't have any mystical powers. He's just a dude with money and a lot of free time. So the minis in this look great. You've probably heard of it. It is a Kickstarter exclusive, so the entire game will not be in retail outside like how Conan was. And their reasoning for it is to keep the costs low for the consumers, so that way they didn't have to pay for an indefinite license to the Batman. I don't know, I actually detest that. It creates false demand, and people are going to wind up backing it because they don't want to miss out on it, but the game does look solid, so there is that. I just don't like the practice of doing that, but what are you going to do? Alright, and that is my 5 Kickstarter games for the past 2 weeks, actually. Kind of slim pickings. I didn't really have to cut anything. I think there was one game that I was on the fence with, but when I saw the rest of these that I mentioned here, it was very easy for me to just knock it off. So slim pickings, again, I don't know if I'm just becoming more cynical because I've been getting poor Kickstarters that I do back, or if there's just slim pickings, so I don't really know. But my Kickstarter for the week, I'm wanting to say, is actually going to be Australia. I really like the concept. It's just insane. It's crazy. It starts off super slow, dials up to 11 at a certain point, uses some of my favorite mechanics, and just overall it looks really interesting. Now, there's a very close tie with the Into the Black, the Into the Black board game. It was a very close tie with that. That one looks really, really interesting as well. Anyways, that is my Kickstarter of the week. Remember to kickstart your week the right way, and I'll see you guys next time in the quarantine.